As part of the deal to cut $38 billion in government spending, funding for high-speed rail was eliminated from this year's budget, and other transportation programs absorbed deep cuts. Gasoline pump prices are at the highest since August 2008, before the financial meltdown. Major oil companies have announced record earnings this week, putting pressure on the White House to end $4 billion in annual tax breaks for oil and gas companies and shift that money to renewable energy projects. We're back to the subsidy conversation because light rail, when you jump up and walk up those steps and either slide a car or drop a token or drop some change into that box, what you're paying does not pay the entire cost of running that light rail system. How does a city come out ahead? How do the economics work? If you're a worker in Houston, in Cleveland, in Dallas, in Atlanta, in all the cities that have embraced light rail in recent years, how do the numbers add up for your city? Javier?
There's a movement, pretty powerful movement in the U.S. right now, since the federal government for the past 10 years has been very inefficient in terms of moving toward a clean economy. It's called the Cool Cities. There are many around the country right now, and they're doing their own things, like the light rail that we were watching just now. There's a vacuum of action. That's what it is right now. And smaller governments, city governments, state governments are taking over what the federal government has failed to do for 10 years. And it's working. We've seen these people talking about the wonders of something that is very low cost, but it produces wonderful results.
You know, it's important to note that driving in a car, one person driving to work by themselves, the amount for gasoline that they pay and for the car doesn't cover the whole cost either. The National Academy of Sciences says that burning oil, which we primarily do for transportation, costs society $60 billion a year in premature deaths and extra health care costs. That's subsidized by others. In addition, the gasoline taxes that drivers pay doesn't cover the whole cost of highway and transit programs. So we're subsidizing all kinds of transportation, not just light rail. And so really the question is it a worthwhile investment? Overall, is society better off overall if we invest in light rail and give people alternatives to driving in cars that have hidden costs that are paid for not by the driver, but by other people?
How do you win that argument, though? I mean, if we played this segment of the show for every commuter in America, suddenly the lights wouldn't go on and they'd all say, oh, you're right, let's get on light rail and fill up the systems that I've ridden on in Los Angeles, in Portland, in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I mean, the light rail has really boomed in recent years, but when I ride it, most often it's empty or semi-empty, and I'm even riding during peak hours of the day. People like it, and when they can replace a specific trip with it, it's convenient because you don't have to park on the other end. Right. But adoption, saying, yeah, I'm going to leave the car at home. It seems like a tough argument to win permanently. You know, when gas comes back down again, people will get back into their cars. How do you win that argument?
In the conversation about increasing gas prices, our recent poll just showed that 71% of Americans are saying that they're experiencing increased financial hardship because of gas prices. So I think we may have to not only provide the incentives, but people have to see. They have to see the impact on their family budgets. Transportation and addressing sustainability in the transportation sector is critical, not just to the fight to reduce pollution and improve air quality in our communities, but to the fight against climate change. The transportation sector is one of the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in our nation, followed only by electricity generation. This is something that we need to do, but in order for people to want to jump on the bandwagon and say this is right for me to do, it needs to be accessible, it needs to be affordable, it needs to be able to get them from point A to point B in a way that, you know, it's not going to hurt their family budgets.
Today, fewer Americans believe that human-induced climate change is really happening. So that argument is, even at this late date, still in dispute.
There's a lot of skepticism, however, not among Latinos. There's been several polls conducted, one by an organization that we co-founded, the National Latino Coalition on Climate Change, and another one by NRDC that shows that the majority of Latinos believe that global warming is a real challenge. It's not, they don't doubt that it's happening. They want Congress to take action immediately, and they believe that environmental regulations are something that's needed by our communities. They're a lot more concerned about environmental pollution than Caucasians and other groups are. It's not a matter of whether it's happening for them because they see it and they feel it, and they want to protect our environment.
So maybe that more realistic view is a result of living different lives. I mean, different Americans live different lives. They're out in the elements more, work outdoors more, live in places that are exposed to industrial pollution more. I mean, there is a different way of life among different Americans.
Of course it is. And as you were mentioning at the beginning of the show, on the impact of toxins and pollutants on us, on our communities, is much higher than the rest of the population. So we actually see, live it, and feel it, and get sick because of it. Not only that, also Latinos in general have these very strong links with their countries of origin, with their families and relatives and friends. And in those countries, global warming is a reality. It's not a theory or something to be debated. No, no, no. It's actually taking place. And especially in Latin America, where everybody is aware that countries, developing countries are the ones who are to suffer the toughest part of the global warming consequences. So yes, we are very much aware of what's going on. So we Latinos are wide open to new suggestions and to new ways of doing things.
You know, Daniel, we just spent the last 40 years dispersing even more. A lot of families bought their house for the first time, which meant moving out to the outskirts of a metropolitan area where housing was cheaper, only near highways and not near public transportation. A lot of families moved further away from the urban core to escape crime and blight and disinvestment, to look for new school systems. This isn't just a one variable challenge. A lot of things are happening at the same time. People are on the move. And a lot of metropolitan areas, look at one of the largest Latino concentrations in the country, Riverside, San Bernardino. That was built and developed and asphalt laid and houses built in a way that's very, very hard to now turn around and get people interested in using public transportation.
Well, that's why we have to give them multiple cleaner choices. The gentleman in the setup piece from the AAA said that high gas prices have driven more people to buy more fuel economic cars. That's partly true, but also in 2009, President Obama established the first new, stronger, more improved fuel economy standards for the first time in over 20 years, and will also reduce pollution as well. Now those first cars are going to be rolling off the factories in a couple months. We need to go take the next step. Let's make cars that get 60 plus miles per gallon by 2025. That will give them choices. Let's provide cleaner alternative fuels like electricity, like natural gas for trucks. That will not only save oil, reduce foreign oil imports, but also dramatically reduce pollution, which is very bad for people who live in the inner cities. So let's provide people with choices so they're not stuck driving an internal combustion engine car that gets 23 miles a gallon. Let's provide them with more choices. And that's where government comes in, both through requiring car companies to make cleaner cars and helping invest in cleaner fuels. Will provide people with more choices so even those people who move far out of town won't have to commute to work in such a wasteful and polluting manner as they do today.
Because the economics of getting around by auto meant that in the last 10 years, when an affluent metropolitan family got rid of their SUV, it went into the secondary market and was bought by a low-income family. So the most polluting, oldest rolling stock, least fuel-efficient cars are being bought by the families and operated by the families that can least afford them. Time for one more break. Stay tuned. Destination Casa Blanca will be back with some final thoughts.